Yeah.
It's sodium and Y for any like okay. And I'm gonna let Vee introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. It's so good to see some familiar faces. It's awesome to see some new ones. I'm so excited to do this with you all today. My name is Vee. I am the lead artist here at the Pro Studio, and we're so excited about that. Yay! A little bit about myself. I started out my career working in theater. I was the makeup designer at the McKittrick for about 5 years. After that, I worked on American Horror Story. I worked on Poor Things, and recently I was on tour with Melanie Martinez, doing the theatrical makeup for the dancers and for the band as well. So this kind of cosmetic application is like my bread and butter, because we're gonna be implementing a lot of stage concepts into this type of makeup application, because it's kiss-proof confidence, baby. We want to be kissing a little bit, you know what I mean? But not be scared of our lipstick being everywhere. So this is Dawn. Yay, Dawn! We love Dawn! Dawn is going to be our model today, and I am so excited about it. So we're going to get started. And we're going to get started off with priming. So the big thing about making sure that your cosmetic application is going to stay a prolonged period of time is working in thin layers and making sure that everything has the duration of time to kind of settle into the skin before you're applying more product on top of it. So for this right now, hello, we're gonna be using Shine Control. Dawn had relayed to me prior that her skin is more on the oily side. So we're gonna be using Shine Control into the very center part of her face. Okay. So starting out on the sides of the nasolabial folds, across the nose, into the upper lip area, onto the other side. And we are going to put this all over the center part of Dawn's wonderful face. So the reason why that we're going in with the Shine Control Primer initially is because straight out the gate, we want to make sure that no oil is going to penetrate through our complexion, especially in Dawn's case, because since she does have a more oilier skin type, we want to mitigate that as much as possible. So this initial step is for that specifically. I'll reiterate that as time goes on, because every single step is for something a little bit different that at the very end holds hands together to create something that won't move or budge. And I'm not going to say impact proof, but we'll say impact resistant more so than anything. Okay? Dawn had also mentioned to me earlier that the perimeter of her face is a little bit more on the normal side. Across the board, I tend to use Hydro Booster kind of no matter what. It's just a really great hydrating primer to be able to use, especially in the perimeter of the skin. So all throughout the perimeter. Okay. Phenomenal. I'm gonna just grab a tissue really quickly. I'm so sorry. As 80% of my foundation comes off, let's get back to it. Yes, we love it. Sanitize my hands. Did y'all know that when you're sanitizing your hands, you're supposed to keep on massaging it in until it's fully dry onto your skin? That's how it actually disinfects your hands. Did you know that? I only found that out it was like a year ago. It wasn't even recently. But really great thing to know. Really great thing to know. Okay. So now we are going to be going in with the Matte Velvet Skin Foundation. in the shade Y503. Hi, welcome. Oh my gosh, hello. Okay. Yeah, so the reason why that I'm using the matte velvet in this case particularly is because since it does dry down, because it is a matte foundation, we can be able to allow it to do that specifically as we're doing other things to then later go on top of it with powders and such. When you allow a product to actually behave with the ways in which that it's supposed to, like you're supposed to allow it some time, you can be able to use less product later and make sure that it's still going to behave accordingly. Does that make sense? Kind of. You want to let the product kind of do its job before you continue to layer things on top of itself. If you move too quickly, at times, what can happen is that you're just layering things on top of itself. When in reality, if you allowed it to do the full set down, to do the full dry time, everything like that, the tone of it is going to shift ever so slightly. And because there's going to be no excess moisture inside of the complexion, you can be able to go on top of it with less powder as well. So it's like, it's a couple things simultaneously, you know? Does that answer your question? Yes. Awesome, I'm so glad. So I am taking the foundation across, again, the perimeter of the skin. And the reason why that I'm blending it into the perimeter first and not directly into the center, because since it is a matte foundation, you would think that you would want to apply it into the center of the part of the face because since it is a mattifying foundation. I'm going to be going in with several concealers and underpainting, like on top of this as well, because there's another complexion product that I'm going to use on top of it. So all of these things together, like if I were to go in with layer foundation all over everything, concealer on top of that, powder on top of that, but like over and over again, it's going to cake up no matter what it is that you do. The more intentional that you are with the placements of your products, the more sheer a layer of the product is going to be across the skin, the better it's going to behave, the more skin-like it's going to look. I'm so sorry, one more time? Not necessarily. It's more so that everything is placed very intentionally. So right now, because this particular foundation is the closest tone that the brand has for this particular line towards Dawn's skin tone. So I'm using this one to be the overall tone across everything. And then in the center, I'm gonna be going with the concealers so that there's no foundation in the center or a very, very light amount. Does that make sense? Okay, awesome. And the nice thing too is that when you really allow a product to fully dry down, you can actually see where it is that you might need additional coverage, like on top of that. It's always better to work in more thinner layers and just blend and buff and keep moving in that direction. Oh, I'm fully blocking it, aren't I? Whoopsies. Sorry, everybody. Does anyone have any additional questions so far? Yeah. I'm so sorry, my love. Would you mind speaking just a little bit louder? Uh-huh. Absolutely not. I actually just forgot that I put it there. I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, yeah. It's because of the antimicrobial properties. Okay. So I think that we're feeling pretty good. We're feeling pretty good about this level of coverage in the perimeter of the skin. So now we're gonna go in with our HD Skin Concealer. So now the thing is that when it comes to the HD Skin Concealer in and of itself, the formulation is gorge. It is gorge, it is fab, it's super thin, it's skin-like, really stunning. The amount of pigmentation that's inside of it is very minimal. Now, for some people, they might think, well, why would I want that? A concealer is supposed to conceal stuff, right? The really nice thing about this concealer is that because it is so thin, you can layer it on top of itself to get to about like a medium coverage that behaves really beautifully on the skin. So it kind of gives in being intentional of your placements, you can be able to use less coverage in certain areas to not cake up later on. Does that make sense how I just explained that? Because I know that sometimes I get a little rambly. Yeah. Not necessarily. I think that in this case, in just my own hand, there's 1,000,007 ways to be able to do like your typical cosmetic application. For today, I'm just using the HD Skin Concealer because I also wanted to showcase it because a lot of people perceive it as like the clean girl type of shtick, type of vibe, right? I think that you can really beautifully manipulate it to still look and behave like skin while providing you an ample amount of coverage. So we're playing around a little bit today. Because also another thing is too is that as the market continues on, certain things are going to come in and out of style, in and out of product development, in and out of just what is trending of the time. You might not always have the full coverage concealers that you want because the brand that you love doesn't have it anymore, or so on and so forth. I think it's always really, really great to give yourself the opportunity to learn or figure out at least how to make other things work for you. I know that that was a little long. Was that helpful? Okay, good. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. So we're going to take this into the center part of the face, and we are placing this not all the way up to the eye, but right where the little trough is happening of the orbital bone. Now, when I say orbital bone, do y'all know what I'm talking about? It's okay if you don't. Totally fine if you don't. Yeah, exactly. So some folks might call it like the eye socket. I would say the orbital bone specifically because the bone itself is what is the three-dimensional aspect to it. The other thing too, the reason why that I mentioned it in this way is because typically the highest amount of discoloration is happening within the trough itself. That's normally where people are saying, oh, I'm seeing a lot of darkness, I'm seeing a lot of this, I'm seeing a lot of that. If you concentrate a lot of what it is that you're doing into that area specifically and just kind of lightly diffuse it, it's going to look way more natural on the skin than going in with like a full-on coverage concealer all the way up to the very tight line of the eye. Does anyone have any questions now? I love to not hear it. So we're gonna be going in with a touch more concealer. Okay. And honestly, I'm actually so excited about doing Dawn's makeup today because I've never had the chance to do her makeup. So I'm like, I'm so excited right now. I have no idea what you just said. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much. This is still the same shade of concealer. Yeah. This is the, did I mention it before? I'm so sorry. This is the 3.6 neutral. Good point. Are y'all familiar with like how the brand labels its cosmetics? With the Y, the N, the R? Yeah? Does anyone not know? Okay, so when you, thank you so much for actually saying that you know. Oh my God, amazing. Well, not you know what I'm trying to say. So the Y in all of our complexion products stands for yellow. That just means that the base tone of it is yellow. Anything that has the letter N is neutral. Anything that has a letter R is red. So at any point in time, if you are wondering about what the tone is of whatever complexion product that we're using, just look at the label of it. That's all that it means. That's it. Yeah. Thank you, Dawn. I appreciate that. Okay. So now from here, I'm going to bop around just a little bit because now we're going to go into doing our cream highlighting and we're still using the HD Skin. So now I'm just going to keep this right into the center part of the face right here, into the very inner corner. Now, this might be a silly question, but when we think about the like the, how do I want to word this? Mm, actually, let me mull it over. I'll be right back. Okay, so we're just placing this one. And this one now is a different shade. I'm sorry. This one is the 3.4N. Yeah. So in this case, I want to actually say, yeah, I'm not going to lie to you. But it was mostly because of the tone. Because this one, the 3.6N, is in the same color family as this one, because this is the 3.4N. So they're still both neutral. I still want it to remain a little bit on the neutral side. Okay, great. Ah, that was okay. When y'all think about highlighting and sculpting, right? Do y'all know why that we use like certain colors in those places? Like when we're sculpting the face with warm tones versus cool tones, what it is that they're going to achieve and how you're highlighting the face, what it is that you're trying to achieve. Do y'all know what it is I'm saying? Yeah, please. Sure. Sure, totally. Thank you so much for saying that. Totally, absolutely. So when we are going in and contouring, you can kind of sculpt with anything, really, if you think about it, because you can do bronzer, you can do contour tones, you can do blusher. It doesn't really matter. You can use whichever one, but they're all meant for specific things separately. So when it comes to bronzing of the skin, we're emulating what our skin would look like if it's just been like if you've been out in the sun, you had a cutie little day at the picnic, you went a little crazy out there. It's meant to emulate that. When it comes to sculpt, when it comes to contouring specifically, it has contour specifically references cool tones. You can sculpt with multiple things, but when it comes to contour specifically, it is intended to be a cool tone product. So both of them are going to do different things. I would always, yes, please. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Like discoloration underneath of the eye? Sure. So what you would do then in that case is that you would go in with a different type of color correction initially. You want to go in with a very sheer amount of product. Hi, welcome. Hi. You want to go in with a really, really sheer amount of product just to cancel it out and then go in on top of that. Allow it to dry down first, either powder it. There's a bunch of different ways to do it, but I would always recommend to do that first. And especially in that case too, sometimes color correction might not sit well into the skin. You might want to think about using fuller coverage products. In that case, it's really just case by case dependent. But I would always recommend for you to originally go in first with some sort of color correction. I hope that that helps. I'm so glad. So now adversely, when it comes to highlighting of the skin, so when kind of what I was saying before, all that like the discoloration that happens underneath of the eye, right? Typically what'll happen is that it's normally in like the cool tone area. So we want to mitigate that because since it is cool toned, it's going to look recessed back into space. We want to color correct that so that it no longer is like pulling backwards, and we want to lift it up afterward with something to highlight that area. Does this make sense how I'm explaining that so far? Okay. I think that there's a lot of value sometimes because I feel as though that when it comes to a lot of makeup education, a lot of things just kind of get thrown at you a lot of the time, and they sort of just anticipate and expect you to understand why it is that we do certain things. But instead of actually showing you or explaining to you the process of it, they kind of just tell you what to do. I think that it's really important to have that base of understanding of things because then as time goes on, it might not always be the same situation. Everybody's skin is different. Everybody has different tones in their skin. There's a lot of different things going on. As long as you understand like the what's the word I'm looking for? The basics, I guess, in that context. I'm not saying that you guys are basic. That is not what I mean. But like the fundamentals. Thank you. The fundamentals of it. It's always gonna help you out later on in time. So now we're gonna go in with a little bit of a sculpt here. I am using from the Face Essentials 3. We live for her. Thank you so much. Ta-da! This is Harmony 3. So I'm going in with these two shades right here. Because in Dawn's case, I want to provide a little bit of that cool tone sculpt, but I don't want it to be too overly dramatic because especially with deeper skin complexions, you can really run the risk of making it look really muddy or making them look super sallow, and we don't want to do that in any capacity. So I'm just taking those two shades and just mixing them together because I really want that cool tone of that deeper shade that's in there. And then I want a little bit of that warmth to kind of lift it back up just a little bit. So just going, and we're following the line of the ear. Can you turn your head that way for me a little bit? Okay. So if you can see, this is the top of Dawn's ear right here. And we are just following that almost completely down just like that, okay? The reason why that we're doing that is because we're also trying to lift the bone structure of the skin, or rather underneath of the skin. The way that I like to describe it or explain it, because, you know, I am a trans woman, so I do a lot of cosmetic application for kind of like the morphology of my face, right? Everyone does that. That's what contouring is. That's what sculpting is, you know? And the ways in which that we are able to achieve certain things is dependent on the placements and the angles. So in this case, I want to kind of just like lift everything upwards because we're kind of go for like a little more sultry romantic type of vibe because, you know, it's supposed to be kiss proof. Oh my God, fantastic, woo! So, oh my God, what did I just say? I totally lost my train of thought. Love you guys. The 104. Sorry. Okay. So we are just going now, and now we're just softly overlaying it where the concealer was. And just applying the concentration of that product more towards the ear and inside, or rather on top of the temple area. Can you look straight ahead for me now, Dawn? I'm gonna just go in with a sponge, just to diffuse ever so slightly. I don't wanna diffuse it too much, but ultimately we want no lines. We want no lines. We do not want the sculpt to look like a, you know, we don't want none of that. We don't want the concealer to also look like the triangle. We don't, none of it at all. Okay. That was heartbreaking, wasn't it? Yeah. That was so sad. Oh, sweet angel, can we give her a big round of applause? Oh my God, thank you so much. Wow. So now we're gonna just go in with that sculpt into the perimeter of the forehead. Do you always have to do a sculpt for a forehead? Period. Thank you for the confidence. You do not have to. A lot of the time, even if it's just like remnants of what it is that's on your brush, all we're doing is just trying to add harmony to the entirety of the skin. Sometimes you don't even have to contour somebody's forehead. You don't have to sculpt someone's forehead. Sometimes they don't really need that. You don't always have to do every single step of everything for everybody's face. You feel me? Cool. Okay, so now I'm gonna just go back in and I'm gonna mix myself with a little bit more of that sculpt. Okay. I'm sorry? So the way that I'm doing this right now, I'm kind of considering this a bit of an underpainting because I am going to be going in on top of it with the Super Boost foundation afterward. It's a super sheer coverage foundation, but the texture of it is so sexy. Oh, it is sexy. So I love to use it to actually kind of like mix everything together onto the skin. So now we're going back in. This is a better way for us to be able to see it. So starting from the top of the ear, right over here, right? This is going to be our guideline right there. We're just taking that. And this is going to be our main deposit of product right back here. And we're going to just buff that in. And we're also going to take that down the sides of the face. The reason why that we also buffed this down into the side, like on the lower jaw area, the back jaw area, is because sometimes you're like thinking back to lines, right? We don't want our sculpt to also just look like in one area. So a way that we can be able to mitigate that, if I had a sponge, I would go back in on top of it. I might, Jocelyn, when you have a chance, would you mind grabbing me another water tone sponge? Thank you so much. I lost my train of thought again. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness gracious. Okay. We want to buff and blend this shade down a little bit into the sides of the face over here, because it's also going to give that sort of natural dimension that's happening to the skin. Going back in with a sponge is also going to allow to pick up some of that product. So it's going to look a little bit more of like it's happening inside of the skin already. That's how we kind of want everything to look, is that it's happening underneath of the skin. Otherwise, though, in the meantime, one little fun thing, which is I would consider a secret weapon, is the powder puff. The powder puff is the most versatile and phenomenal thing that you could be able to have inside of your makeup kit. The reason being is that you can be able to use it to provide an airbrush finish to whatever complexion it is that you're laying down. It's just a really great way. If you haven't played around with powder puffs before, I would highly, highly recommend it. Thank you so much. Yay, Jocelyn. Woo! So now going in and just pouncing that sponge on top. Mm. I'm so sorry. I missed 20% of what you just said. You said, go back from over here? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Mm. I see. I see. Okay. So this is how I'm going to reply to that, is that there's so many different styles of sculpt. All of them kind of do something a little bit different. This is a really great guideline for like to kind of begin to understand or educate yourself on like lifting, right? Like the concept of lift as a technique. Not necessarily everybody's face shape is going to interact well with that specifically. So I would say take this more so as like it's a really great tip to start and then kind of develop and build it with time. Does that help? Yeah, okay. I'm going to just go back in with the original foundation, just a little bit on top of where we placed that. Sculpting tone. Okay, phenom. How is everything sitting on your skin so far? How does it feel? Yeah, fab. Okay, can you turn your head that way for me? Then can you turn your head this way for me? Thank you so much. And now I'm going to just step back really quickly because I want to take a peek at Dawn's skin from a further away distance. Okay, great. Thank you so much. So the reason why it's important to step back sometimes from the makeup application that you're doing is because you're pretty much just painting, right? So with any sort of canvas that you might have when you are a painter, you want to step away from it to kind of see how it's actually behaving. We can kind of get lost in the details sometimes of what it is that we're doing when it comes to texture, and we want to get lost sometimes in the details when it comes to cosmetic application, but we still want to see if it's successful from a distance away. Kind of also goes into like the theatrical aspect of like, paint for the back row kind of deal. We're not necessarily doing that, but we want to make sure that even from a distance, light is interacting with things correctly. The actual sculpts that I'm creating on the skin are actually looking like the ways in which that they should. Like when Dawn had turned her face this way before, I noticed that this area wasn't exactly how defined as I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be a little bit tighter. So I went back in with a little bit of that foundation just to cut into that area specifically. Okay, great. So now from here, we're gonna be going into blusher. Yes. Uh-huh. Sure. Sure. Totally. I think that's a really great point to bring up. I think that in situations like that, I think that like because you just said yourself like going in on top of it with a cool tone kind of makes it look a little more muddy, makes it look not as successful as you want it to look. In that case, I might to recommend going in with something a tiny bit warmer to kind of counteract it on top rather than going cooler. Because if it's going cooler in that situation, if it's making it look muddy and challenging or what have you want to negate some of that still. So in using a warmer tone, even in like a powder or like a cream on top of it or whatever, it's going to help negate it ever so slightly more. You just have to be really mindful of how much you're applying and in the actual places that you're applying it. That's what kind of makeup becomes a lot about, is that how much of a product and where you're putting it. Does that help? I'm so glad. What was I doing? Blusher. We're gonna go into blush. We love blusher. Oh my god. So in this case, let's see. I think I want to mix a little bit. I want to mix a little bit. We're gonna go in with this shade right here and a little bit of this one right here. This one right here is the HD Skin Blush and Glow palette. This palette is so gorge. Oh my god, she is so sexy. If you're a fan of cream blushes and having a wide assortment of them, I'm always somebody who really believes in like using multiple tones kind of across the face, like multiple colors across the face. It kind of just allows for a lot more dimensionality to appear. I would definitely recommend something like this because of having just so many options of different blush tones, different highlighter tones, things of that nature. Da-da-da-da-da. Okay, sure. This brush right here, I'm using the 144. I've been using this kind of continuously. I've used 3 of them so far. I've been using this for the concealer. I used this for the primer originally, and now I'm using it for the cream blush. So now when you place, okay, this is gonna sound a little like annoying maybe. When you think of your blusher placement, right? And you're thinking of the discoloration of the eye, blusher is actually like a super awesome way to help mitigate some of that discoloration as well. So say that you have like any sort of like cool tones that are appearing underneath of it or in the orbital bone area. Because we're gonna go back in still on top of this with a little bit more concealer to help buff and diffuse the blush into the skin, this is gonna help just change the tone. We're just changing tones really. That's all that it's doing. It's just kind of like multiple layers of, I want to call it color correction using multiple products of varying things. So now from here, yeah, let's go into the powder puff. Absolutely. Absolutely. So now when you apply your blusher, can you turn your head this way for me? Okay, so when you apply your blusher up here, you're gonna kind of reinforce like that lift that's happening, like into the back part of the cheekbone. When you apply it, look straight ahead for me. When you apply it to the center part of the face, it's adding volume. That's what it's going to do. Because blusher is meant to replicate or resemble blood rushing underneath of the skin, right? So when we think of that, we think of youthfulness, we think of fuller volume, we think of a lot of things that resemble like cherubic kind of like sensibilities, you know? So when we are applying a blusher, we're also trying to consider what is it that we're trying to work with in their facial structure. Are we trying to apply a higher amount to the center part of the face to give a little bit more volume to the cheek? Can you smile for me? So now if you see like right here into this very center part of the face, having that little like punch of blusher right there because, oh my God, so cutie, you know? So in this case, because the look itself is gonna be a little bit more on like the romantic sweetheart side, that's why we're gonna be going with that. With an ever so slight lift onto the side over here on the top of the cheekbone. Okay. I wouldn't. Okay, so okay, so when you're doing your, that's actually so great. Thank you so much for saying that. I really appreciate that. So when you are applying your blush, please don't smile during the entire process of it. Do not do that. Please do not. I appreciate it if you wouldn't. The reason being is that you're not smiling all the time. It's the same way when it comes to your eyeliner. You're not blinking all the time. Why would you apply your eyeliner while your eye is closed when your eyes are going to be open in a natural state the entire time? Same thing with your cheeks. So whenever that you're applying blusher, think about how it's going to sit relaxed, but also touch base on like, oh, okay, cute. I like how it's interacting with light. I like the shaping of what it is that's happening on my skin. Thank you, Dawn. So we're gonna go in with those blushers again. There's my spatula. Okay. Gonna go in on the other side now. And it's not that I'm being sparing with product. I'm just being a little bit more conscientious of how much product it is that I am applying to the skin. That's all. Because especially when it comes to blusher, I will always go back on top of it with some form of complexion because I really want the blush to look as though it's happening underneath of the skin. Okay, and we want to just bring that in a little bit more forward. Okay. Now, does it feel crazy to watch me apply blusher so close to the center part of the face? I mean, it is the center part of the face. Do you guys have any reactions to that whatsoever? Fab, I'm so glad because this is a really, really great way for that after when you apply concealer on top of it, it's gonna ever so slightly mix together right into the, how would you call it? The edge of either product. It's gonna still look like it's illuminated from within. Okay, and just pouncing that. And whenever I'm like blending out with a beauty sponge of sorts, um, also just like word to the wise, if you're using a beauty sponge on a client, always go disposable. I would never recommend for you to use something like this onto a client. The reason being is that you can't always disinfect them all the way through. There's some people who say that you can. A lot of people say that you can't. I err on the side of caution when it comes to that type of thing. If you're going to use a beauty sponge that is disposable that you really like. Or find a really cheapo one, like Juno & Co. does a fabulous one that you just want to give away to somebody. Great, fantastic. But otherwise, I would say just save your bank a little bit. Use it on cosmetics and complexions that you aren't going to just toss away. I care more about your kit and how much money that you're spending inside of your kit to achieve the things in which that you want to do. But for yourself though, the sponge, baby, this sponge is crazy. This sponge is crazy. Okay, so now we're gonna step away again. And can you turn your head that way for me? Great. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry. Did I just buff you? Okay, so now from here, so now we've done our cream blusher, we've done our cream highlighting, we've done our cream sculpting. Now I'm gonna just go back in with a little bit of that concealer again. And we are just applying that right into that pocket right there. Nope, this is the skin tone one. Turn your head that way for me. Can you turn it this way for me? Thank you so much. And now I am placing this onto the outer third and onto the top of the cheekbone. Can anyone tell me why I'm doing that? Does anyone have any thoughts about that? Yeah, exactly that. It's just to add a little bit more light into that area. Not like the way that it catches the light, but more so how light is going to interact with it. Can you turn your head that way for me one more time? And now again with our sponge. Exactly, exactly. I think the big thing about like when it comes to complexion, like in its entirety, is that everything is going to interact together. You know, the eyes interact with the skin, it interacts with the cheekbone, everything is like together, which I know is a very like, well, duh type of sentiment. But I feel like a lot of the time, you don't have to go too hard on every single part of your face. Kind of like what I was saying before, you know? Because also, this just gives a really great, like, now I have a guideline, you know, because now it just follows along the top side of the cheekbone. Make your job easier. Work with what you already have happening, you know? Okay. So from here now, what we're going to do is we are going to use Miss and Fix. Oh my God, wow, we love her. She's fab. So this I'm going to use on top of the creams. I'm going to re-blend it with the, or rather not blend it, but press it into the skin with the beauty sponge. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Please invest in a small fan. Please do it. Little itty bitty baby fan. Okay. And how are we feeling so far about the complexion? How is it looking to you guys? Are we a fan? I'm so glad. I'm so, so glad. Because now this is kind of just the first layer of everything, because we're still gonna be doing some powders on top of it. Because we're thinking of, this is super long wear. It's gotta be, you know? So we wanna do layers of intentional placements of multiple types of products on top of each other. So today I will be using the HD Skin Setting Powder in 4.1 for a little bit more of a warm bronze to the perimeter. After that, for the face, 3.2 Tan Chestnut. Huh? I know, I'm keeping it that way for a reason. No, I'm keeping it that way for a reason. Because these ones deposit a lot of product. Hello. And then finally, 0.4 in Corrective Banana. Okay, so we're gonna close that back up. Jocelyn, do we have a blush palette inside over there? Yeah, like powder. Thank you. Okay. So now before I go into that, of going with all our powders and everything, I'm first gonna be doing a layer of the Hydra Boost foundation. So the Hydra, thank you so much. You are an angel and I love you. I owe you my life. So now with the Super Boost, or rather the Hydra Boost, I'm sorry, foundation, we're going to mix a small amount of Aqua Seal inside of it. Where has my Aqua Seal gone? Oh my goodness. Wow. So I'm gonna just put in a couple drops of that. I would say for something like this, I mean, it's kind of hard to really give you a measurement. I'm so sorry. It's more of like a 2 to 3 dropper, like per pump, I would say. That's a really good rule of thumb for that. Aqua Seal? Sure. I'm so sorry, my nose, my goodness. I need a tissue. I'm so very sorry. So Aqua Seal is a mixing agent that you would combine with a multitude of different types of products to be able to make sure that it'll dry down with like a resin seal on top of it. So it will make whatever products that you mix with it have more waterproof like fixation onto the skin. You can be able to use this in a lot of different ways. Like say you're on set for an editorial based shoot and the photographer wanted you last second to come up with like an electric blue liner situation, right? Baby, he did not tell you that. He did not tell you that. But you do have your color palette and you have Aqua Seal. You can dig up a little bit of that pigment, mix it together with Aqua Seal, you have a liquid liner. You can be able to do it in those ways. But in this case, what we're using it for is to instead mix it with our complexion. Let's grab a little spatula. We're mixing it with our complexion because since this one right here, everything that we've used so far is like suction to the skin originally with just the process of how we've done everything. So this on top of it is going to act like a coat on top of it all to make sure that this will not move because we are still going to be applying powders on top of this. It sets really beautifully onto the skin. So this one's kind of like the star of the show, I feel like, in relation to this. Everything else, the way that it behaves on the skin is going to be very long wear, but this one specifically is going to kind of give that barrier. Yeah. Awesome question. Thank you for asking that. So with the foundation, it's more of like a, I'm sorry? Oh, I was like, that was crazy. It's more of like a satin type finish, I would say. It's a super sheer foundation. It does layer pretty nicely, I would say. But if you are somebody who likes like full coverage, I think that this is a really great addition with your standard everyday makeup application. It's more so that it's going to combine with the foundation that I've mixed it with to create like a polymer resin layer so that it will maintain its adhesion to the skin and also not get destroyed by humidity, by moisture, things of that sort. It also allows for a little bit more of an impact resistance. So say that like, you're just on like a romantic date and your spouse is like, oh my God, you're so beautiful. It's not gonna come off into their hands. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah, you can combine it and mix it with like a multitude, truthfully speaking. I would definitely say to give it the best opportunity possible, focus primarily on silicone-based cosmetics versus water-based. It's going to have a little bit more of a durability. Yeah. Did you have a question? Phenomenal. Okay. Oh, this is the shade 10. Yep, in the Super Boost. Okay, and we're just taking that on top of the beauty sponge as well. And we're just pouncing this across the skin one more time. What about a what? Sure. I mean, don't make out with their white shirt. You know what I'm saying? I would say, because I'm trying to think, if you do this in the correct process, you should not have any issues whatsoever. You should be completely fine. Mm. Right, exactly. It's not impact proof, but this is impact resistant. Okay, phenom. Gorge. So now that was all of the cream aspects to this complexion process. So we're not gonna go into our blusher. But the powder kind, wow. Okay. So now let's see. I want to go in a little bit of these two right here. So this is the shade Hello. B350, Flashing Fire. Because I want a little bit of that warmth, but I also want to add a little bit of like a hue of like a berry tone in there. So we're also going to mix it with B260, Limitless Berry. So these two right here. This one right here is 160. I don't know who said it, so I'm just going to look around. Okay. So now you might have seen that I kind of like picked up product, kicked it off, picked up product, kicked it off. There's a couple different ways that you can want to do this. The reason why that I'm doing that is because I want the product to kind of retreat back into the bristles of the brush so that it slowly disperses through the actual brush itself. Another way that you're able to do that is if you take your brush, right? It's going to be a loud sound for a second. I do apologize. You take the back of your brush, not sound at all, silly. But regardless of that, the pigment is going to fall into the back of the brush to give a little bit more of an even distribution of the product. Because if you ever notice that sometimes when you pick up product onto a brush, it's just a huge impact of it. This is a really great way to kind of mitigate that from happening. They're super pigmented. They are, I think if it's a gel to powder consistency, no? Yeah, they're super pigmented. So working with them in layers is gonna be your best bet because she does a good job. Baby, she wants to be seen from outer space. Come on now, don't play with her. Okay. So now I'm taking that the main deposit of that product was into the center part of the face, and we're just slowly lifting it upwards. Does anyone know why? Does anyone have any ideas as to why? It's okay if you don't. Exactly, because I want to add a little bit more emphasis into the center part of the face. I'm trying to add more volume there, but I also want to still lift up the cheekbone ever so slightly. So I'm taking it main deposit of product and then just pulling it back. Running it through the temple, you can run it through the top of the brow bone. Maybe even a little bit across the bridge of the nose, add a little bit of color there. Oh, do you? Baby, then let's do it. Come on now. Oh my God, sweetie pie angel baby, look how cute she is. Going back in with our sponge to just diffuse those edges. And to really just continue to press into the skin. Can you turn your head that way for me? Now look straight ahead. Do y'all see what I mean now when I'm talking about like the blush placement in and of itself and kind of what it's doing to the face? Because now it looks more like the rush of blood is happening in the center part of the face. It's kind of giving the impression that everything is a little bit more fuller, just a little bit more volume in those spaces. So now from here, we are going to be going in with the same brush with the 4.1. That is so much powder. Oh. Don't worry about it. It's fine. It's not. All right, there we go. Okay. So now we're gonna go in with our bronzer into the perimeter of the face. Yeah, this is the HD Skin Setting Powder in the shade 4.1. So we're not gonna make that mistake again, because that was nuts.
They're so finely milled.
And a little bit definitely does go a very long way. Cool. So just applying that, I mean, we're just putting everything kind of back on top of itself, right? Because now I'm going in with that bronzing tone on top of the areas that we provided a little bit of sculpt, right? We already went in with our blusher of the powder version on top of the cream blusher. It's the same thing. That's how we want to navigate our application of powders as well. Okay. And now we're going to take that and we're also going to just lightly dust it across the center part of the face. The reason why that I'm also dusting this across the center part of the face is because that bronzing tone, I still like the way that blood looks like underneath the skin, the way that we're bringing warmth through that way is going to look a little bit different than say with a bronzer, because like we were talking about before, blusher is meant to replicate blood rushing underneath of the skin, whereas bronzer is meant to replicate the ways in which that the sun has given us that kind of like sun-kissed, goddessy type of glow. So when we think about how the ways in which that the sun interacts with our face, this is kind of always the face that we always, like this is the area that we always get like our sunburn happening, right? So we take a little bit of bronzer there, it's just another way to kind of keep everything very harmonious. But that's also why earlier, when I went in with that concealer, that by itself works in this makeup, what I'm doing today, right? So now I use that particular color tone specifically because I knew I was going to work on top of it with other powders to kind of continue to reshape and structure. If this isn't how your typical hand works, then I would say just go for different tones. Don't go for different things that you're thinking about. I might have just gone with just the 3.6 before instead of going with that lighter shade into the very inner part of it. Okay, so now one more time. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but the skin is kind of looking fab. It's kind of looking hot, sexy, beautiful, gorgeous. And we love to see it. So now we're going to go in with a lighter shade. And again, this one was the 3.2. I am using a 140 brush. And I am going to just press this in under the eye. Because now everything else has kind of been set with the other products that we were using. So now this is kind of the last step of it to continue to create those 3D shapes that are happening inside of the skin. So we were focusing it directly underneath of the eyes, around the nasolabial folds, the top lip area. Listen, some of the most beautiful women in the world have mustaches, okay? I know that's right. I'm so sorry? Uh-huh. Sure. I think it's really dependent on the formulation of translucent powder specifically. A lot of translucent powders, they might like they might have a lot of mica inside of them. And what mica means is that it's going to have light reflecting properties inside of it. So if you've ever found like those celebrity photos of people who have like crazy flashback happening, it's typically because of a translucent powder that has too much mica that wasn't utilized appropriately. I would say that using both in tandem, like colored powders as well as a powder like that, I think is a phenomenal way to kind of make sure that the face is going to still look beautiful in photography. But I like to use it as I spit everywhere. I like to use it as a supplement to my cosmetic application. Does that help? Okay, I'm so glad. So like there's a lot of things that you don't necessarily like need to use like when you're doing makeup, right? But like us as makeup artists, we always want to make sure that we just have every single option available, to make sure that whatever it is that we're doing is going to come out flawlessly. Can you turn your head this way for me? Yeah, thank you so much. I'm just taking that powder. I powdered the center part of the face. Look straight ahead for me now. Down the center of the nose. This is the 3.2 tan chestnut. Tan chestnut. And then finally, just going back in with a powder puff, completely clean. The reason why I'm going with this is because I want to just fully make sure that every single layer of everything that we've been using is fully, thank you so much. I was about to say conjoined. Exactly. So our powder puffs specifically have a velvet texture to them. The reason why that I like to use them so much, especially for cream-based blending, is because this powder puff is going to absorb some of that product ever so slightly, but more so the moisture versus the pigment load. So very different in comparison to using a wet-tinned beauty sponge. This is going to give a more airbrush-like finish, and it's going to help reinforce a little bit more of a satin approach. Whereas a beauty sponge is going to give you a little bit more of like that dewy sensibility to it. I also really like to use powder puffs to just like help reinforce my products to settle in before I have to apply any sort of powders and things like that. So it's kind of it reduces the amount that you have on the face, but more so from the moisture aspect, not the pigment load out. Okay, wow. So now we're gonna just set down the face really quick. Close your eyes for me. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now, Dawn, before we move on to the eyes, could you be able to take a peek and look into the mirror if there's anything that you would like to shift at all, or are we happy with this level? Yeah? Okay, work. I feel like it goes without saying, but the reason why that I also wanted to ask that to Dawn is because regardless of how I may perceive the makeup look to be, it's the client that's going to be wearing this. We want to help respect and support them as much as humanly possible. So even if there's something that's like not necessarily in your particular style, but it is what it is that they want because it makes them comfortable, buck up, baby. You got to do it. You gotta make that happen because the first thing that's most important is making sure that your client feels comfortable. They're the ones who have to wear it. You know. Yes. What's up? Yeah. Tell me. Hmm. Yes. It's actually going to do the opposite. So it's going to do the opposite because the polymers that are inside of the setting spray specifically are going to kind of latch onto each other, lock in, thank you, because you're using it in multiple layers across different finishes and stages of the skin. It's going to just help continuously make sure that it's fully locked into the skin. Does that answer your question? I'm so glad. I just want to disinfect this a little bit. So when you're using like shadow sticks of whatever type or pencils or what have you, I feel like this might have to go without saying, but we always want to make sure that our stuff is fully disinfected and ready to be put onto somebody else. I know, it's shocking, right? So we're gonna be taking the Aqua Resist Smoky Shadow, and this is in the shade 2 Cocoa. And I'm just taking this right onto the outer third of the eye. Can you just turn your head that way for me? So now I'm using the shadow stick specifically because they are waterproof entirely once they set down. So because this makeup, we want to keep it, I mean, like the eyes typically don't like disintegrate throughout the day and everything, but we want to give this still, it's going to be staying from morning till night. So now going in very quickly with a fluffy brush, this is the 242. I am just going to go in and buff and diffuse. Okay. And we're being very light with it because we still kind of want this to look elevated and enhanced form of the self. We're not trying to completely restructure like something that isn't naturally there on the face. We're using that line that was mentioned earlier from how we were doing our complexion to help continuously reinforce that. Yeah. I did not. It is a very clean eyelid. With this particular product, very short. It is a very short amount of time. It is. Yeah, I would say like the color fix in comparison, I think has an even less so amount of time. This, in that case, you do have a little bit more wiggle room. I would definitely still say like, don't be too slow about it, because otherwise it is just going to be suctioned onto there. And then if you're going to try to keep blending it afterward, it's like, I mean, you know what happens when something's already like adhered. It's going to begin to get a little mucked, I'm so sorry. This one? Yeah, so this one, it's a fully waterproof shadow stick. So the actual finish of it is going to be on like the stickier side. If you've ever noticed when it comes to like waterproof products, a lot of the times they kind of have like that like stickier kind of like texture at the very end of it. It's always going to have that. It's just how the product is formulated. But it's not too sticky. It's just more so that's just how it's going to dry down. So it might not have like the most matte finish, but baby, it's there. It's there and it's, yeah. No, it's okay. What's up? Yeah. Uh-huh. Hmm. You don't necessarily have to because I am still going to be layering other things on top of the eye as well. In this case, I didn't want to use any of these particular complexion products across the eye because I also didn't want to like layer it up too much into that area because that also can happen. So in this case, I'm just going in with a waterproof based product. It's not going to interrupt. Excuse me. It's not going to interact too terribly with like the skin. Um, and it's not going to break down as quickly. Mm, of course. But I do love that question though, because if you are working with someone who has like incredibly oily eyelids, absolutely. Absolutely, you want to use something. I would not recommend to use something that's hydrating. I would definitely recommend, I'm honestly in this case, you could probably just go in with the shine control like we did earlier, and that would be enough, you know? Sure, 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 sure. In that case, then I would say to go in with a super high coverage, really like a matte concealer. No skincare product inside of it. There's like the eyelid should be generally clean of like everything possible to give it the best opportunity to kind of exist on the skin itself. See, I would just say just go straight in with the concealer. I wouldn't even say to even worry about color correction on the eyelid specifically because if especially if you're going in on top of it with additional products and everything, I would say no, you don't have to. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Please, please, please. I'm sorry, you're saying to apply this onto the skin after concealer? Sure, sure, sure. 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 No, I think that that's a great question. Um, so what I would say is kind of like it sort of goes based off what I was saying before a little bit of like so when you are using something on the eyelid to kind of mitigate discoloration and things of that sort, the reason why that I say to use a matte concealer specifically is because when it fully dries down and sets down, you should have no issues in relation to that specifically. If you are using something that has a high amount of emollient factors inside of it, hydrating factors inside of it, it's never gonna like actually set down into the skin. It's going to continue to moisturize, which is then going to allow for overproduction of oil and sebum onto the mobile lid. It's just not going to work out in your benefit. So I would say in that context, just allow the product to kind of dry down, allow it to do its thing, and then work in on top of it.
Put my 2 cents in.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
It's been my experience that the two don't necessarily work well together. Like when I do my concealer and then I go in with the shadow stick, it doesn't adhere, yeah, to the lid. So what happens, I also said it, what I find is the intensity of the color of the shadow stick will not be the same. It definitely be a lot like, well, yeah. So then cap is what you want for the color. I would just go with the shadow stick. Certain things will show up a certain to the eyes with a brighter thing.
Okay, sure.
It's like I always feel like I always have that issue.
Ah, I see, I see, I see. Okay. Mm, sure, sure. Do you ever set the shadow stick after with a conjoining color? Mm, mm, mm. Sure, and that makes sense. I think that sometimes I find success when I'm using more emollient products in that regard of like using like powders like in betwixt it. But otherwise, yeah, I would say what Dawn had mentioned, I think is a really hmm 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 sure. hmm In relation to the eye specifically. I see. Okay. Uh-huh. hmm Mm, sure, sure. You know what? Why don't we when we talk down yeah, yeah, we'll touch base on that one too. Good point. You ate. You ate with that one. I'm not gonna lie. You did. You did. You ate. Thank you, Antonia. So now I went in with the shade 11, which is Pink Canyon of the Shadow Sticks, which is kind of like this, has a little bit of like a pinky toned hue to it. I want to reinforce that with the Starlit Diamond Powder. I think it's in the shade 107. 107, which is kind of like this pinky, champagne-y. There's a couple different things going on there. Yeah, in the shade 107. So now we're gonna just take that. What? No, that's okay. And we're gonna just take that and we're just gonna press it across the lid. Because so in this case, I don't want like this to be like an elaborate eyelid look of sorts. I really just kind of want this to look like, just like really soft, really pretty. With a little pop of color. Would you say it's giving Barbie? Okay, period. Okay. And the smoky shadow stick also works as a really, really great base for powder. Yes. So when it comes to that specifically, I think it's like working in layers and making sure that the things that you're applying are just working with one another, like in that sense. So like I set the under eyes and everything. I'm gonna go back in afterward to dust off and kick any sort of like excess that fell onto the skin with that same setting powder onto my actual brush itself. Because since it's already set in that area, it's not tacky anymore. So it's going to help allow those pigments to kind of just fly off of the skin. But also I think too that if like in situations like this, like, well, not this one, but say that if you find yourself into a situation where you have a lot of pigment fall out onto the skin, just take off the makeup in that area. It's okay, babe. It's okay. Like just remove it and just build off of that. If you have an issue that comes up, just re-emulsify that area. Let's say with like the Hydra Booster. And after that, just remove that spot, go back in on top, pat out the perimeter of where that edge was, of where the discoloration is now happening, of where the foundation is not and where it is. Go back in with the foundation that you have. Same process as you did before. It's like nothing even happened, which I know that I did not do that in front of you. So maybe to witness that in your mind's eye is not the best, but I'll show you to you later. So we're just taking the Starlit Diamond. Okay. And so now from here, can you turn your head that way for me? Okay. So now I am taking the shade 608 Limitless Brown, and I am just following the upper mobile lid. Okay, open your eyes for me. Can you look straight ahead? Yeah, perfect, just like that, amazing. So now I am going to just do a quick liner. I do want to smoke this out ever so slightly. Okay, can you turn your head that way for me? Okay. Cute. So the same thing on the other side. We are taking our Limitless Brown, holding it at an angle. So another thing is to always just remember to allow your tools to kind of do their job too. From holding it from this way, you already have the point of the liner that's happening. You have the placement of it because you're now just following a certain area. So now from here, I want it to just go completely straight. I want that to go further out. And then just refine. Yep. You want what? I would say, now it depends on the context. So now when it comes to performance specifically, there are some other things that I would also include in this process. In this case, like because we are kind of considering this more as like hello, more of like we're wearing this just like to exist throughout the day versus we're dancing for 2.5 hours on a crazy stage with a whole bunch of environmental factors being thrown at us. There are other things that I would recommend to do additionally, other types of products to include as well. In this case, for what we're doing for like a general, like full long wear cosmetic application, this is going to do the job for it. Okay. Oh my God, you want to hear my voice again? I'm just going on top because I'm going to just carve this out ever so slightly. I want to bring a little bit more shape to right here. Close your eyes for me. Thank you so much. Yep, exactly. Just add a little bit more structure to it. Can you turn your head that way for me? Okay. And just working that through the brow area, or rather the brow bone area. And so the way that I designed this look specifically is that it really doesn't matter if you get like that glitter pigment onto like this area out here. It doesn't matter whatsoever. I wanted this to be a really simple look for you guys to be able to kind of like just like throw onto the face and still have it be gorgeous. So like if you have really sexy tip, if you ever feel as though that a blend is not happening for you, throw a shimmer on top of it. Baby, it's blended. It doesn't matter because the ways in which that light interacts with it underneath of it, it refracts. So anything that's going to play around with light, it's going to refract it so that any sort of pigmentation that's underneath of it is going to disperse. So if you have just like a little spot that's a little, it's just, it's causing grief and pain, maybe just throw a shimmer on top of it. Right as rain. And now finally, after that, I'm gonna go back in with my setting powder in the shade 3.2. And I'm just taking that across that area as well, just to further reinforce that diffusal. Okay, let's step back one more time. Ooh, ooh, did you see that color shift? Ooh, that's so good. Great, okay. So now we're gonna go into the brows really quickly because we're gonna just like take a pause on the eyes because I'm going to go back in underneath of it, but the eyes aren't necessarily like the biggest thing here. I just wanted to put something on so that it's not like a fully unfledged look. So now we're gonna go into our brows and I'm going to use the shade. This is the shade 40 in the Aqua Resist Brow Definer. So this is just our brow pencil. It's super thin. It's really great for hair-like strokes. So now going in, you can be able to do the golden ratio rule from going from the center part of the face, like there. And then from the outer side of the nose, like that. Are you all familiar with like the nasal ratio towards the eyebrows? Great. So we're gonna just do that again today. So from the very center part of the nose tip, wow, wow, great. From the angle, wow, from the outer part of the nostril, wow. Same thing on the other side. And then, great. So now we're gonna just kind of connect the dots. I always like to start out underneath first. It gives a better representation of like bushy hair when that depth of color is coming from the underside versus the top. If you go from the top originally, it's gonna kind of look like stamps. If you go from underneath and allow it to move upward, it's going to just be a softer application. The reason why that I'm using the brow definer specifically is because I want this to still replicate hair to some capacity, but I also want a lot of control over the brows specifically. The brows are really impactful. The brows really change up the shape of your face. So you want to just make sure that what it is that you're doing with them is exactly what you want. And also in this case, because it is a waterproof product, it's going to behave very similarly towards all the other waterproof products that we've had on the face. Okay. And now you might be saying, but Vee, what about carving out the eyebrow? Oh my God, Vee, what am I gonna do? Sure, it's fine. You could do that. I'm not gonna do it today, but you can do that. That's fine. So now just going in from the underneath of the brow, following the natural shape, but also filling in certain areas to help elongate. You're extending the tail ever so slightly as well. And just filling in, just moving slow. Going in with some smaller strokes into the very middle part of the face. We don't want to be as severe into this area. And also, just for full transparency, this area, hating how that looks, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna edit it ever so slightly. It's okay if you don't like what it is that you're doing in one particular spot, or if like the line goes a little bit too far. Everything is adjustable, everything is editable. I think it's really important sometimes to remember that we are just people. We are makeup artists, we are a tangible human form. It's okay that we're gonna muck up a little bit here and there. We just have to know the ways in which that we can be able to help adjust and mitigate those things from happening. So in this area right here, right, I personally like I think that this side's a little bit more successful, right? So I'm gonna go in onto this side and just lightly brush it through right on top of that area. And with a brush that I was using before, with that setting powder, just gonna go in on top. And now, going back in one more time. Okay. Can you turn your head that way for me? Okay. And now just going back and forth. I mean, with brows, you can kind of just really get lost in them. And I want them to be a little bit on the fluffier end. So I'm gonna go in, I might have just lied to you. I think I wanna go in and carve in a little bit right into this spot right there. So we're gonna do that. Hi, Camden. Hmm?
I love a good carved
Do you love a good
brown.
carved brown? Well, baby, you're gonna get what you want. Okay, so now we're gonna go in. Where did my concealer? Here it is. We're gonna be going in with our 3.4. This brush that I'm using right here, it wore off, so I don't know. It's a fine angle brush. Okay. Alrighty. So keeping the carve just right into this area. I don't want to go like too heavy with it. I want to just kind of keep it concentrated right into this little spot right here. I want to just help support that dimension. Okay. Oh my God, you guys should have seen me during Fashion Week. There was one pose that I was doing somebody's makeup and I was fully like this, like just like really getting into their face. Okay, so now I'm gonna step back again. I think we're feeling pretty good about that. How are we feeling about that so far, everybody? Yeah, we're feeling good? Amazing. So now we're gonna be doing, because I know that Dawn is gonna be doing her own tight lining as well as mascara. So I'm gonna just jump into the lip. Because the other big part of this, the kiss proof confidence, is to make sure that our lip is gonna stay on our face, right? So we're gonna do the lip now. So I'm gonna be going in first with Limitless Brown, again, in the Artist Color Pencil Extreme. And do I have a sharpener over here? Hello, hi. Great. Sharpening this bad boy up. And so we're using a deeper tone right now because we're gonna be going in with lighter shades on the inside to kind of give that look of a three-dimensional aspect to it, like still reinforcing that shaping that's gonna be happening. And now I'm gonna be honest with y'all. Do any of y'all really like to do lips? Like, are lips like your thing? Any of y'all? Guess what, baby? You? I am so jealous. What the hell are you talking about? That's crazy. Oh my God. Doing lips is truly the bane of my existence. I will be fully transparent about that. But I've learned a lot of like little techniques and tricks. I want to learn some of yours because, oh mama. So I am just taking the pencil and just kind of roughly laying it down, being mindful of where it is that I'm placing the color. But I am also going to be buffing this into the lip. So now when we think of longevity of a lip specifically, especially when it comes to lip liner, you are going to take your pencil and you are going to massage it into the lip first. It's going to ensure that your pigmentation is going to remain on the lip. I don't know if you ever notice or feel as though that when you line up your lips and everything and don't press on top of it, you might almost feel like a thickness, like a layer to it, that it's like almost beads up into the perimeter part of the lip and it sort of just dissipates over time. This is a really great way to help mitigating that specifically. And in this case as well, I'm going to apply a little bit more emphasis onto the very top and bottoms of the lip. Does anyone have any idea as to why? I'm sorry? Exactly, yeah. So now when we think of like the actual placements of pigments on the lips specifically, again, it's always going to change up the shape of what it is that we're doing, right? It's going to give different emphases to different areas of the lips. For myself, whenever I do a lip, I really love that sort of like super pouted type of lip. I think it's really charming. I think it's super sweet. So a way that we can be able to make that happen without it looking too, I'm making my lips look like this. Exactly, by making them look a little bit overdrawn, is just applying a little bit more of that pigment into those areas, diffusing it out so that it looks like from a distance that this has more visual weight to it. Because whenever we're doing makeup, a lot of this is just about weight. Like, we are painters, we are artists creating something onto somebody's face. So now I'm just taking a bullet brush, nothing on it at all. And I'm just taking this and I am just pushing it into the lip. That is all that I am doing. This one is a waterproof pencil, so it's not going to move and budge. If you eat something super oily, yes, it is. Yes, it is. That is going to happen with most waterproof-based products, that once you incorporate an oil into it of any type whatsoever, it's going to break it down expeditiously. Same thing when you apply gloss. I am a gloss girl. I'm a huge gloss girl. Our new glosses are fab. Love them. For a long wear lip, I'm going to show you how stunning that they look. It is not going to work. It is not going to work for a long wear type of deal. Just as that. So gloss, it's not going to last you 12 hours. The after effects of the hydration of it, yes, but otherwise, I would not recommend that. So if you are somebody who wants to implement a gloss for a client, make sure that they have a gloss with them, like throughout the day and everything. So now from here, I'm going to be going in with the shade Legendary Latte, number 136, just into the center parts of the lips. Let's chop off some of this. Okay. And now going back in with that bullet brush, wherever I've placed it. Here it is. And going in with Aqua Seal as well. And mixing those two together. You okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. Just layering that right on top. And just a little bit more, because I want a little bit more color payoff in the very center part of the lip. This is the shade Legendary Latte. It is the number 136. Yes, 136. Oh, the liner? Limitless Brown. It's the 608. Mm-hmm. And can you just... How does that feel on your lip right now? Yeah, it does? Amazing. I'm so happy to hear that. So now from here, this lip is where I would want to leave it, generally. And I mean, go in, and I'm going to carve it ever so slightly, but otherwise, though, when it comes to like the waterproof aspects of the actual product itself, like I was saying before, the gloss is going to impact that. Otherwise, in this case, the lip is going to remain intact, even if, get a little smooshy at dinner. But just to showcase the actual product itself, because I really do live for our gloss. It's really fab. It just got released. It's really good. So this one is in the shade 04. Hello? Latte glaze. Thank you. Just take some of that. It does not have capsaicin inside of it, so it's not going to irritate your lips. It does have a bit of menthol inside of it, though, so that what it's going to do, or rather, not menthol specifically, but something that
which adds the cooling.
yes, which is also going to give a slight plumping effect to the lip as well. Okay, now onto the top lip. This is number 4 in Latte Glaze, was it?
Yes.
Yes, Latte Glaze in the shade 04 of the Super Boost.
We have 11 shades.
And it's like really stunning. Okay, so now, yeah, if you want to tight line your eyes for me, whoop, that would be great. There you are. And I did have, and I will disinfect the lash curler for you. So while Dawn is going to be doing her tight lining and everything, do y'all have any thoughts, any questions, anything? Yes, my love, in the front.
The name of the pink shimmer.
Uh-huh. Oh, it's the 107 in the Starlit Diamond powder. Yes. Why? So that it would be able to remain intact on the lip, so they would not break down through any sort of like impact of whatever is going on. I'm sorry?
Is it a matte lipstick?
So that particular lipstick is not a matte lipstick. I used Aquaseal with a satin-based lipstick, but I also used a very sheer amount of it because I didn't really want the actual pigment of the like a huge amount of that because it's a wax base anyway. If I went in with like a mattifying lipstick, like a liquid to matte, different story. In this case, I still wanted to implement the lipstick more as just like kind of like a general topper to the pencil. Because the other thing too is that when we're thinking about like longevity of our products and everything, we also kind of wanted to maintain, at least in the lip area, as like close enough to like the natural lip, just a bit more enhanced, because as it does wear down, it's not going to look as severe. Or layers of staining underneath of it with different types of products. Anything to kind of help make it look uniform like throughout the day, it's going to exist in that manner. That is phenomenal. You are amazing. And so now from here, so this is, let me grab another tissue. I'm going to disinfect this now for Dawn. Because then after this, really, all I want to do is just like lift up ever so slightly what's been placed onto the outer third, throw in some mascara, and that's, I think, primarily going to be it. There you are, my love. I appreciate that. Does anyone have any other questions about anything at all? Okay, great. I think when it comes to doing like these sorts of like applications and everything, I think that sometimes it's so important to remember that you already have the skill sets that are involved in making something like this happen. It's just that sometimes we are educated on different styles of makeup and then think that we cannot incorporate them into one another. I think that sometimes it's just really important to kind of like take a step back and to look at your own education and understanding of what it is that you're doing for general cosmetic application and see how in which you can plug in other techniques and skills to make it work for different things. I hope that's like a hoorah type of sentiment to you guys. Makeup can like feel like really like scary or mystical sometimes, especially maybe when you're not the most understanding of like skincare aspects or when we're understanding like, you know, skin texture, skin types and things of that nature. Beautiful. Thank you so much. But you have a lot more education on it than you think that you do. So just always keep that in mind. And then if you don't know something, just come to us and we'll tell you about it. Okay. So now from here, our last little thing, well, not last, we have 2 more things to do. I'm going in with just a little bit of black onto the 400, which I think Do we have the 400? Is that a thing? Live for this brush. It is stun. Because it kind of has like a cut angle at the top of it. It kind of just builds, it already builds in the shape for you automatically. So I'm gonna just go in just a little bit. Just diffuse this up. Look straight ahead for me. Yeah, stun. Oh my God. So same thing on this side. And you might have been thinking before, B, if you're such a professional makeup artist, why didn't you tightline Dawn's eyes? And to that I say, mind your business. No, I'm just kidding. Sometimes, like, honestly, why make your job harder? If someone has a really challenging time with tightlining with either the top or the bottom, but they can do it themselves, you can help guide them to do it the ways in which that you need it. Just work with them on it. Make your life easier too. And especially if you're not fully confident in it, it's okay. It's okay. And in Dawn's case, she had mentioned to me that typically no matter what, she gets a little blinky. Her eyes get a little bit watery. Not so much when she does it herself. So she's going to go in first with exactly what it is that she's going to put onto it, and I just slightly adjust it. That's it. The distance. I live for Sade. Do y'all live for Sade? Oh, she eats. Okay. So now from here, we're just gonna put on some mascara because otherwise, I mean, the makeup look is pretty much done. Do you have any thoughts, any questions, anything at all whatsoever? Yes, my love. Uh-huh. I can show you exactly right now. Literally a way that I always like do it whenever I'm like working on something like really fast, you know? Drop, drop. You can pick up a brush. You can just use the side of like, and now it's exactly what you need it to be. So this is how I always do this when it comes to the artist color pencil specifically. On the back of my hand, obviously have your hands be disinfected first. Just mix it right there. Use the side of the pencil and just slide in whichever ways that you need to. If you don't have a blusher, use one of the pinks or the reds that we have in the artist color pencils, same exact way. Apply it across the cheek, blend it immediately afterward, donezo. There's a lot of different ways that you can utilize this product with the pencil specifically. Does anyone have any other questions or thoughts? Okay, well then I implore you guys to stand on up to come take a peek closer if you would like to. And thank you guys so much for coming today. Oh my God, I love literally all of you so much. Thank you. Ah, this is so fun. You guys are so cute. Yes, please. Where did? Oh yeah, let's spray you down one more time.